Hi, hi. Thanks for joining me. I just want to share something with you that happened. Okay, um, I a short while ago. I was resting for a minute, and all of a sudden, I was getting in a bit of an altered state, so to speak. Okay. Now, yesterday you watched my video. You may, I mean, you probably, I don't know. I don't make that assumption, but if you did watch my video, you may have heard me say something about these beings being on another plane, another strata, and that how on these other planes and stratas that seeing craft, seeing craft flying around is a very common thing. Okay, so it's like you see them and it's like they're just part of the skyline. Okay, I've seen this in a few different ways. I've seen this in a few different ways. Okay, I've seen. Forgive me. I'm channeling as I'm speaking, so forgive me. I've seen this in a few different ways. I've seen this. Okay, so I think it was like a couple of years ago now. I was sort of meditating or in a bit of an altered state, so to speak. And then I was on a roof and I could see a flying saucer sort of came overhead. And it was just like I said yesterday, it was like normal, okay, like a normal thing to have happened. I looked at it and I thought, oh yeah, there's just this is pretty normal, you know. This isn't anything to be it's just I was fine with it. Like I was like, hey, how you doing? So, and my feeling was from that was that this was the norm. Like this was that wherever I was on that in that moment, it was a normal thing to see a flying saucer literally a few meters above your head. Okay, and it was again nothing. And then I've also had an experience where I've been abducted, so to speak, on the astral plane, and where I was got off a bus in this dream, or like I don't know, I question whether or not it was a dream, to be honest. But I got off a bus, and then all of a sudden I was frozen in the middle of the street by this light, by this energy, okay? And it was unmistakable. And as soon as it happened, it literally froze me on the spot. As soon as it happened, I knew what was coming. I knew where it was coming from, okay? I knew that this was coming from them. Okay. And then also, I mean, I've had other things happen as well. You know, I've seen them in dreams. I've seen these beings in dream states. You know, I've seen quite a few different things, to be honest, in that state of, you know, in my dream state and meditation states where I've been taken to different realms. Basically, in a nutshell, just now I was sort of you know, in a bit of a, I don't know, altered state, as some may call it. And, but I was taken somewhere. Yesterday I said that these beings are from another strata, another plane, another dimension. And I said that, and today I received confirmation of that. I was taken to, forgive me again, I'm channeling as I'm speaking. I was taken to another strata I saw a sequence of images very quick, like, you know, very, very big, like clear impressions, but very quickly. I saw like a UAP. I saw a familiar, something I'd seen before. Okay, like feels like even if it's like a past life scene, or like something that I've seen before, maybe like another version of myself has seen. But I've seen a UAP, and I saw a UAP, sorry, and I saw a few other things, and I was told, in like as I saw those had those impressions, those images of this other plane, that that these beings are from another plane. Basically, they're not from another strata. They said, yes, like that's true, we are from another strata. Okay, they gave me clear confirmation of that. Okay, so like I said, and I also I've just remembered I was going to mention this one, But several weeks ago, a few months ago, I had a vision of Jesus on another plane, and and again, I had a few impressions of that plane, and that very real impressions. Okay. And I drew that. I shared this on X, and I drew the image, and it's in one of my notebooks. But Jesus was in the corner of the image, and there were flying saucers in the background, very normal, like I said, like there was nothing, okay? Flying saucers in the background, and beings, so non-humans in the background that looked a bit like, not greys necessarily, but more like Arcturians, what some people call Arcturians, okay? I would say more like, and again, very normal, just very normal, nothing unusual about that. Very, very normal, and so yeah. So I mean, again, for me and my own experience has been when I've had, and it's not just in dream states and altered states that I've interacted with these entities. I've been very conscious and interacted with them, but all the while it has been the case consistently that they are not physical beings, okay? They are not physical. I don't believe that they are physical. I keep being shown that they're not physical beings. I have not seen any proof or anything that makes me think that they're otherwise. I don't believe that we would have non-human biological bodies in our possession. For that reason, I'm not ruling it out. But I feel like, and this doesn't negate the existence of extraterrestrials or UAP, okay? But a lot of this issue is man-made. A lot of it is man-made, okay? A lot of it is man-made. And that's the truth of it. A lot of this has been, it's like a relic almost. It's been a bit of an albatross, I think, for a lot of people in these communities for a long time, this situation, and I think that's why there's such a big, not just for other reasons as well, but I think that, and the phenomenon is real, okay? Like these beings are real, and there are influences, the way they influence us is something we need to disclose, okay? But we also need to we need to surface in like I said, compassionate and humanitarian consciousness informed manner. Like I said, the activities, the extent to which a lot of this has been man-made, this is really like a relic of the Cold War, okay, post Second World War, the world, post Second World War era, okay, the Cold War, okay, these programs, these activities, the UAP thing, it really is like like I said, it's like a hangover from that time, okay? And I think there is a desire amongst a lot of people in these communities to get to finally just, to sort of part ways with this, okay? Because it is toxic, okay? And there's a huge humanitarian aspect to this, like lots of human rights issues attached to this that that need to be confronted. Direct energy weapons, attacks, holding people hostage in this cabal, so to speak, the restrictions put on people's lives, the trafficking, and people everybody gets hurt by this, okay? Everybody gets hurt by it, everybody gets hurt by it, and it's really sad. And I believe in universal amnesty. I've been shown time and time again, like I said, that we are all loved unconditionally. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't. Like I said, everybody is loved unconditionally. Everybody is loved without reservation. Nobody is excluded from that love list. God loves everything and everyone, okay? And so there's no hell, okay? God wants everybody, to know that they are loved unconditionally, and even if they don't know that or want to know that, they're still loved unconditionally. And that's the beautiful thing, okay? So that's the beautiful thing, all right? Is that, even if you don't want to know those things, you're still loved. You're not going to hell because you don't believe, okay? It's all part of the big unfolding, okay? It's not, you being Jewish, or you being Catholic, or you being Muslim, or whoever, you've got all the people, people in different beliefs in the room. None of us are going to hell. That's the news. Nobody's going to hell. Whatever you are, whoever you are, whatever you believe, you're all fine. Okay, so you can believe whatever you want, and that's the truth of it, and you're still going to be okay. Okay, in that sense, like, God doesn't have favorites. Okay, it doesn't have chosen people, doesn't have chosen anything or anyone. It loves everything to and infinitely, just everything so much, and you are part of that. And this is not a religious message at all. This is a message for everybody. Okay, so forgive me. I can't remember why I started talking about that again, but I like mentioning it. Because there's always a good moment. I think we're just talking about, we're talking about disclosures, and why they're important, and the fact that really this is something we've been needing to sort of free ourselves from for a while. And I think that time is, we're at that time now where that's happening, or like there's a push for that, and that's great, Again, I'm not trying to be contrarian towards anyone here, because I think everybody's life is beautiful, okay? Everybody's life is beautiful. Everybody's life has a purpose. Even people who are saying things like there are bodies of greys and all these other things, I mean, they are doing, like, again, I've got nothing to say about that, like nothing really, in the sense that I know that things are not cut and dry. They're still playing a huge part in turning that wheel, okay? They're still playing a part in turning that wheel, okay? And putting certain things out there in the public mind that are very important, okay? Very important. You've got to take into account you've got to humanize things a bit, okay? I think in that sense, or try to at least appreciate that people, how can I say it, like, you've got to try and appreciate perhaps that there are lots of restrictions still on these people, that things have to be done in a certain way, that that a lot of you've got to take that into consideration, have compassion for them in that sense, if there is, or maybe they just have the wrong information, I don't know. But at the same time, like I said, like we've got to have some compassion for people, okay? Got to have, I think we've got to take that, take things a bit more lightly in that sense, okay? Of course, I'm going to still talk about what I think is right based on direct experience with this issue, okay? And the insights of others who really strongly haven't, helped me understand what I've been through, but have also just basically corroborated my experience as well, okay, which is really important. But again, it's nothing, again, other people's, what other people are putting forward, David Grush, Matt Brown. I love Matt Brown. David Grush is fantastic. I love David Grush's message about, like, humanity becoming an intergalactic, and like moving, all those things about the future. I love all that. I love that. I think it's a great message, because it's a message I've received as well, okay? It chimes with the message I've received. So I know that that's a cool message, like that's a good message to be sharing with people. All the other stuff, again, it's like a chess game, I think, in lots of ways, and I again, and even if he'd had the wrong information, we all get, again, it's just, like I said, everybody's sort of doing their bit, okay, in that sense, okay? And so, but, I mean, like I said, if you want to read the posts of someone, and Dylan Borland as well, who I love, he's fantastic, he's lovely, again, all people who I found, a lot of benefited from immensely, you know, their messages and their presence, and in being inspired by what they've done. And so definitely people to listen to, you know, or just, you know, encourage. But also a guy called Shane Frakes as well. He is fantastic. He is amazing. I mean, he, you know, for me, in terms of narrative, he's the one that I look to you know, there are things, again, you've got to bear in mind that he still has to follow certain things, okay? But in terms of what he says about the man-made aspect of disclosure, so how the extent to which it's man-made, okay? I believe that he is definitely somebody who's gonna tell you things that, you know, show you things that, you know, you're not gonna hear, that are both truthful but that are actually, you know, very closely guarded in many ways, because a lot of people don't want this to get out necessarily. How can I say? I think they want to control the way this gets out. And I don't blame them, okay? I don't blame them for wanting to do that, because there is a lot at stake, okay? Because of the types of things that have been involved, okay? I think there's a lot of reservation about sharing these details, like, you know, going out and being, yeah, we created these programs and we did this to people. You know, again, it's not going to be like, it's a very, very complex thing, okay? So, but the truth of the matter is, a lot of the UAP issue has been a guise or a cover, and forgive me, it has been a guise or a cover for you know, secret programs and other activities, okay? So that's the truth of it, you know, and that is really, like, I mean, that's why the Epstein issue is so closely linked with all this, because you know, that network and group of people, like, they have, you know, subsidized a lot of these things. I would say, I mean, I'm not going to say that, you know, I'm not going to accuse anybody or, you know, but my feeling is that, you know, there's probably, I don't know, and when I say they, I'm not saying anyone specifically. Again, I'm not trying to point fingers at anyone. I'm just saying that from the Epstein emails and the sense that I get about the whole thing, and just the sense of, you know, knowing that he was linked to advanced technology programs and UAP and non-human intelligence, you know, the sort of interest in consciousness and metaphysics and other things, you know, my feeling is that, you know, that it follows that would be the case. And so this is why the Epstein issue is so closely linked to the whole UAP and non-human intelligence thing, I think, as well, for other reasons too. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, like I said, a lot of this has to do with advanced technology, advanced technology, consciousness interest, secret societies, and so on, okay? And so, yeah, again, no blame at all right? No blame. No blame. This isn't about blame. I'm just saying that this is the way it is. Like, the phenomenon is real. UAP, I've seen UAP, but they're not physical, as far as, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not ruling out that physical UAP exist, okay? But I feel like UAP, the UAP I've seen have been like transient objects, okay? Basically, like, what I would say transient objects. So, like, sources that sort of, you know, that like plasma sources that fade into the skyline, forgive me, plasma sources that fade, you know, disappear, you know, travel across and disappear, plasma that, you know, I've seen plasma sort of entities, like, plasma just appear out of nowhere, like, just, I've seen all kinds of things, but none of it has been like nuts and bolts craft, okay? And I'm not dismissing that there are nuts and bolts craft at all. Of course there could be. And I think that the illusion of physicality even is something that can be achieved, okay? Because it's all about consciousness, you know? If you can possibly, like, these beings, especially greys, okay? These beings could definitely give you the illusion, and I'm getting kind of the indication now that that's the case, okay? But they can definitely give you the illusion, the sense that you are experiencing something that, and this doesn't negate the reality of it. And by all means, if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be wrong, because I don't know everything, okay? But my feeling is, like I said, a lot of this takes place in like a liminal space in consciousness. It takes place in a liminal space, okay? Like a sort of, like I said, an altered state, okay? As someone like Shane would say, okay? Altered states of consciousness. And that is because they're from another strata, they're from another plane, okay? So for them to access us, we need to kind of meet them, like almost like in a dream state or meditation state. Not necessarily, in fact, not necessarily exclusively at all, because I have had instances where I've had encounters with them in the middle of the night, okay? But they've still been non-physical. They've still been non-physical, okay? I felt their energy, like I know when they approach me. For instance, I don't know, was it 3.5 years ago? I was sat here in my living room and I was looking, there's a balcony window here, and it was the middle of the night and I was watching TV. And I could hear this being speaking to me telepathically, okay? It was talking to me telepathically, okay? And it approached, I could feel it, and its energy was so distinctive, so powerful, that like basically, I could feel that it was approaching on the balcony, even though I couldn't see it, but I could feel that it was getting closer, okay? And as it came closer, my stomach flipped, okay? My stomach literally flipped. And again, not seeing it, but I could hear it. I could hear what it was saying, but my stomach flipped and I just ran off. My fight or flight kicked in and I just like ran off, because I've always had a tremendous fear since I was a kid of being abducted by aliens. Like tremendous fear, okay? Huge fear of it. I've always been afraid of it, like since I was like a child. So and so but I knew intuitively, as soon as that energy came towards me, I was like, oh no, here we go. I'm getting out of here, So like, again, there's something very, very distinctive about that energy. I think what happens, I think, thinking about that, I wonder, I do wonder, like, I wonder whether there's interactions happening in two ways here. Whether, forgive me, interactions happening in two ways. So approaching on the balcony, I wonder whether they are actually more physical at that point. No, not physical, that's the wrong word. Okay. Right. So okay. So they are non-physical. Okay. That's not, for me, that's not up for questioning. For me personally, again, I'm happy to be wrong. But I'm going to take back what I was going to say, because pretty much every time I've had like an encounter with them where I've sensed them being close, I've had that response of feeling like my stomach is flipping, okay? Like I've had that response where I've felt them in the room with me, okay? And I've just known that they were there. I've woken up in the middle of the night, I know they're there. I've worked, all sorts of things, okay? I know they're there, okay? But yeah, no physical bodies. I can see them in my third eye, okay? Very often in my mind's eye. And I'll see them like in like some weird sort of tunnel sometimes, where like they do some robotic movements, do a bit of a robot dance or whatever. They're very androidy, these entities, okay? Very androidy. Very AI, some of them. Not the mantids. Mantids aren't like that, but like they're the smaller greys definitely are like very robotic, in some ways. Like they have very androidy gestures. Like that's kind of like, I don't know. Again, this language is not the best, but I hope you know what I mean. Like mantid, the language is not. I don't really pay much. For somebody who's had like quite a few experiences, like I haven't. I don't really. The language is not, or the law is not really something I've paid much attention to be honest. I've just wanted to have my own experiences and make up my own mind about things more than anything. But like the taller ones, the ones that are in they wear black, and they all wear black, but the ones that are a bit taller, they are more humanoid, like they're more like humans. So they're more human like. They're more in their more like more organic is the wrong word. More like us, but obviously not the same. The smaller ones are more like robotic, okay? But nonetheless, all non-physical beings, okay? So yeah, I'm gonna keep talking about this, okay? Because it's important. I hope, it's my experience, like I said, they're not physical. Honestly, if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be wrong, okay? And I think of cases all the time where I think to myself, well, what about this person's experience, and what about that person's experience, and what did that mean? But I think for me personally, like, even if it happened in a liminal, like an altered state of consciousness, again, it doesn't mean it didn't happen, okay? The fact, just because it happens I think we've got it a bit inversely, it wrong, really. If something happens in a dream, it doesn't mean it's not valid, okay? If something happens in an altered state of consciousness, don't get me wrong, there are exceptions, of course, to that. But I think invalidating what happens in the dream state is wrong, because what actually happens in our dream state is that our body releases our consciousness very often, and we're free to have astral experiences, okay? So, and the reason for that is because when we're awake, we are constantly engaged with the act of perceiving, okay? Constantly engaged with the act of processing what's around us, okay? Constantly taking things in, constantly engaged in the world. When we meditate, when we're not perceiving, when we shut down our senses, when we not so identify with thought and perception, that is when we are able to access other states of consciousness, other states of awareness. And that also happens in our dreams as well. Not always, okay? This happens, but it happens. I mean, I think it happens, we all have these experiences, okay? But, very often if you're relaxed enough and not as again, in deep enough sleep, you are then able to basically go off and have like lucid dreams, or astral experiences, go on journeys, meet up with spirit buddies, all sorts of things, okay? So yeah, it's, again, the thing that keeps us from having those experiences in our day-to-day life. People would say, well, why aren't I having these experiences? There's a few reasons for that, but one of the main reasons is because we're constantly engaged in the act of perception when we're awake, okay? And, when we're not doing, when we're not doing that, okay? When we're not doing that, we are then free to go off, I'm channeling again as I'm speaking. We're then free to go off and have again, receive messages, be visited, go off on different planes and have experiences, do all kinds of things, go traveling, again. So the idea that we are, and what happens in, again, this is not always the case, but not, again, you can't sort of generalize about this, but my point is, if you have an experience that felt like an abduction, for instance, again, first of all, of course, I'm not ruling out that it's possible it could be physical, okay? I'm not ruling that out. I don't believe that I don't believe in those things myself, per se. I leave some room for doubt on that, okay? I do leave room for doubt on that, okay? But my feeling is about this happens again in on other planes, or like in an altered state of consciousness, okay? This is my feeling. And the fact that it happens in that way, the fact it happens in that way doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Okay? The fact that it happened in that way doesn't mean it didn't happen. Okay? If it, and again, I leave room for doubt about that. I leave room for like the possibility that goodness knows, I mean, maybe there have been people who have had that experience of being taken physically, okay? I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that I don't necessarily believe that to be the case, okay? Like that's based on what I've been through. I don't see that and all the confirmation I've received, I don't believe that that's the case. I don't think that that's what's happening here. Again, my mind is flicking through things as I'm talking. That's why I'm speaking like this. My mind is thinking, what about this person's account? What about this story and all this sort of thing? And amazing things I think can happen in consciousness. Amazing things can happen with use of consciousness. It doesn't mean they're not real. Even if it happened that way, it doesn't mean it's not real. You saw a light in the sky, or like interesting lights, or you saw, I mean, again, goodness knows, I mean, I'm not gonna negate, like, again, portals are real, I know these beings use wormholes and things like that. Some of them, like, they create like tunnels in space. I've seen what they kind of shown me that, okay? I've also seen that I also had a really interesting vision, like a couple of years ago, was it last year, where I saw a craft and it was in deep space. Forgive me. It was a craft in deep space. And it looked a bit like a beetle, almost like a black beetle. It was kind of weird. It was interesting, like something off Star Trek or something. And but I say that and everybody says, but it's not really off Star Trek. Like, but it just looked, or maybe Alien is more appropriate. I don't know. It was black anyway, and had a really interesting like shape to it. And it had like these. It was at the end. It had like sort of like how can I say it, like it had two arms coming from its sort of the head of the craft, or whatever you want to say. It had two sort of like arms or pincers almost. Pincers, like look like pincers. And my feeling was that what they were doing is that they were generating in between those pincers, is that they were generating energy to create portals. Okay, that's my feeling. Okay, from that is that craft, what it was doing in that, it was doing something with energy to create like a wormhole or something, it was doing something, create like an aperture in space for another craft to come in, or to maybe move itself. Okay, but it was the idea was that it was definitely doing this to as a way of time travel, okay, or like traveling across, space travel. Okay, so it was really, again, I can't tell you where they were. I mean, I can see it in my mind's eye. Maybe I'll have to try and draw it. Again, I can't remember all the details, but I have a rough idea, of what it looked like. But it was definitely in deep space. Like it wasn't like in, it wasn't in our solar system, for instance. There were no objects like I recognized around it. There was like a nebula, I think, possibly in the background or something like that. But I don't know. But other than that, like it would just look like it was in deep space, or like it was definitely not in our solar system for sure. But yeah, it was really interesting. And like, again, my feeling was that they used the energy that they generated with those pincers, whatever it was. And it looked like, my feeling was that it sort of was like the energy was, I couldn't tell you. I've got something in my mind's eye, but again, I can't tell. I'm not a scientist. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but whatever it was, like, definitely was creating like a tunnel or some sort of aperture, like I said. Anyway, so anyway, I know that it's possible for them to do that. What I'm trying to say is that, like, maybe it is possible for things to appear in and out of transit for craft that are non-physical, or maybe even physical, but my feeling is non-physical, to appear in our airspace, in our world, using to transition through our world using things like like wormholes and whatever, and maybe even, I don't know, through consciousness. Like I said, anything is possible. Okay, so through consciousness, like, you can have the feeling of it being like a tangible craft. I mean, I mean, again, I can't discount that, like, you can, a physical object can do those things either. I mean, it's very possible, I guess, maybe, I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not a scientist, I'm just me. Just me, I'm me, I don't have a scientific background other than, doing a year of observational astronomy at university, but that's about it. I can't really tell you, like, if that's possible, but I'm guessing why not. Or at least my feeling is maybe not that, but like I said, at least the appearance of craft might explain why things appear and disappear. Okay, possibly. Okay, that it's maybe on a different plane, or maybe, like, again, maybe it is very much like they sort of are able to, how can I say it? What's the best way to say this? Maybe a bit like Star Trek. I don't know what. I can't remember. Forgive me, my memory's awful. But maybe like they're able to, like, break objects down, and and then maybe make them reappear in, like, a different form elsewhere. I don't know. I don't know. I can't. I'm gonna stick to the simplest thing here. And I'm going to say that it's probably more likely that they're non-physical, and that they're just, like, basically tunneling into our strata, so to speak, with these craft. But, like, again, why not? Again, I mean, by all means, like, it could be that, a physical craft can do these things. There's no reason. I mean, I can't. Again, I'm sure there are people out there thinking, oh well, what this would prevent. Well, okay, that's fine. You can take that ball and run with it. But I mean, again, I'm just going to throw out what I've seen. Okay. It's really great, whatever it is. What I saw was definitely doing something with time travel. Okay. It was definitely doing something with space, space-time travel. Okay. Something to do with, like, like it was showing me what it does. Okay. So yeah, anyway, so